You from the Spit Studios in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. This is the Spit Sports Show. Back at you guys with the regular Saturday programming that we had planned all along, and there is just so much to get into. One of the greatest Vancouver sports moments that I can remember in recent history. It might be time to hit the panic button on our local CFL team. We're only less than a week away now from the Canucks making arguably the most important draft pick that they've had since they picked the Sedins back in 99 or maybe even earlier than that. Caleb, how have you been feeling about the Vancouver sports environment these days, my man? Because my goodness, there is no shortage of excitement and nervousness and every emotion that you could imagine in the air, depending on the area you want to focus in.
Yeah, I mean, you said it there. Canada's doing great, probably better than a lot of people expected. The Lions aren't, probably a lot worse than people expected. And then the Canucks, huge decision, like you said, since they took the Sedins second and third overall in 1999. I'm surprised how quickly the draft is. It's like less than a week away, like it's almost here. Those off-season talks about this and that, it's actually coming up and it's actually going to be here. So it's exciting to see what the Canucks do and where all those players end up. So a lot of exciting stuff in the city.
For sure, especially in this draft in particular, I think that the city as a whole has spent more time analyzing this draft class than, again, any one that we've had in decades, it really
Hmm.
feels like. And we're going to get to that. But we want to start with what happened last night. The BC Lions get absolutely smoked by the Hamilton Tiger Cats 41-27, and it was not that close.
Yeah.
Really, a minute into the game, Caleb, I don't know about you, but I got the vibe of what this was going to be like when, with 55 seconds into the game, they took the top off of the defense with a 54-yard touchdown. Um, Only rushed four on that play, and the safety gets caught flat-footed. Just fundamental, terrible defensive football. And
Hmm.
then the next drive, 55-yard play over the top. Few plays later, they score a touchdown. The Lions had to match the Tiger Cats' potent offense, and they were really only able to kick field goals. I'll let you start with this one, Caleb, because I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts considering the work you put in with this team over the offseason. How shocking was it for you to see this team start off as dull and lifeless through two games as I've seen this team in probably 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, well, I think, like I said last week or in last episode, I think the secondary was really a huge concern. And like we said after the first week, it's like, okay, well, they need to grow, they need to get better. They were just nothing but worse, honestly. And I don't know how you could be worse than they were in week one. That coupled with the injuries they have offensively, I mean, literally all their wide receivers are injured. McGee is going to be out for a while. Katoy's going to be out for a while. Passan got injured in the game. Hatcher was injured in warm-ups. A
McKinnis is going to
few
be out for a
O-line,
little bit here.
yeah, a few O-linemen went down too. So I feel really bad for Rourke. I think he's still, playing as good as he can, and he's still the best player in the league in my opinion. But when you have so many injuries and you have a slow start to a game like they did again, and you can't capitalize, you're getting field goals, not touchdowns. And Hamilton's a very good team. Like Bo Levi Mitchell's playing the best ball of his, was some of the best ball of his life. They're a very high-powered offense. They're a very good team, and they get to fast starts. And against a secondary like this, who's young and inexperienced, perhaps some really bad coaching from DC Mike Benavides. Maybe he, needs to be fired. Who knows? But something needs to change quickly because this didn't seem like that motivating, oh, we felt like we should have won in Saskatchewan type of game. This felt like from the first snap to the last, they really didn't even have a chance.
Agreed. It felt like a tale of two halves against Saskatchewan, where in the
Yeah.
first it was all of the secondary issues that you just mentioned, but they gave you enough hope in the second half with how they were able to score in the red zone. And the defense was not great by any means, but they were at least able to keep a lid on top. They weren't getting beaten for explosive plays all over again. And they weren't able to at all kindle that momentum into week two. Like you mentioned about Bo Levi Mitchell, he didn't record an incompletion until 25 minutes had gone past in this game.
Yeah.
It looked like backyard football against air. It looked like the wind coming off of the lakes of Hamilton put up more defense against the Tiger Cats than the BC Lions were actually able to do. And the thing about the coaching, to the point you brought up, is on two fronts, I thought that there were insane decisions made throughout the game that weren't corrected. As we just said, as objective viewers watching on the television, we knew 5 minutes into that game that BC was going to have to score touchdown after touchdown to be able to keep up with what Hamilton was doing against that secondary. You're trotting on White for 4 field goal attempts. You're not going to go
Hmm.
for one of those. And I understand, like, the 3rd and 19, you got to kick a field goal there, take a sack, cool. But on the three other drives, they were within 10 yards of getting the first down, considering the situation that they were in, which was absolutely dire at that point. Put the ball in the MVP's hands rather than committing to being down by 4 more points because you know that Hamilton is going to be able to drive down the field. And as you pointed out with the defensive coordinator, man, it looked like the Lions were lost from the opening kickoff. And I don't like calling for people's jobs in general, a lot less than through 2 weeks. But like Jackson Finley is a really, really good prospect. This
Yeah.
kid is an athlete, but I think everybody knows he's not great in man coverage. In terms of taking guys one on one, he's much more of a zone type player. So why are you putting him in isolated situations all of the time? Like they have the young talent that can be developed, but it looks like he hasn't been able to refine any of these players to the extent that you would like to see on a Grey Cup favorite. And when the standard is the standard at this point, you're meant to be one of the better teams in the league. We talked about how before the season started, the entire goal was to host the Western Finals, for
Yeah.
God's sakes. 0-2, you're not only in a hole, you're honestly at the point where you got to change those expectations after 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
he's absolutely on the hot seat to me.
Yeah, and I mean, like this game was never close. It was 41-12
Correct.
at one point, and then, Rourke was taken out and they got a few touchdowns from Chase Bryce, the backup quarterback. But I mean, last year they had a slow start too, and it
Mhm.
ended up costing them that home field advantage. So,
That's right.
if they could get over that this season. But I do think one interesting point that I wanted to mention, which was what you mentioned last week in those
Mhm.
Lions jerseys, they looked like the Cincinnati Bengals with how bad the defense played. Well, they reminded me of the Bengals again with how Roy is in that sort of Burrow type of situation where he has to literally outscore to even get a chance to win.
Yeah.
Along with all those injuries they have, this is just an impossible recipe for success. I honestly like I like Nick Senecal. He had a really good game, 120
Mhm.
yards, 2 touchdowns. He's a rookie. If he can get going, that'll be huge. But like Nate DeMontenac, another receiver, he's injured. He was their first round pick this year. I mean, these injuries, it's football. Injuries happen, but these injuries offensively are really going to cost them. And then with the learning struggles on defense, I don't see a way out for the Lions. It could get ugly here.
Yeah, and the issue with injuries is, especially with the Lions in this case, they're not spread out. Like you mentioned, all four starters from week one in the receiver room are out.
Yeah.
And you don't have that reliability of, okay, well, we're down the first guy, at least the second guy can step up. Oh, wait, no, the second guy's out, so the third guy, it's a trickle down effect. And when you're down to your fifth wide receiver in an offense, like you said, it reminds me of, to use a different analogy, college football 26 when you're on like Northeast Arkansas and you have to score 50 points to keep up with Alabama. If you make one
Yeah.
mistake, it's over. Like if you don't have your top four weapons and God knows they can't run the ball right now, like it's just you're setting him up to fail. And I think Rourke, in terms of the Lions' issues yesterday, was like 50th on that list, if I'm being honest. I
Oh yeah.
think he deserves next to no blame
Yeah.
for what went down. Anyone, and there was a lot more noise about his performance than I expected there to be. I don't really check my phone during these games. But once I saw the reaction after, a lot of it had to do with Rourke not scoring touchdowns in those first two drives, instead losing it to field goals. Like, I don't know what you wanted him to do on those second downs, man. There was nobody open down the field when the replay showed it, and he was under pressure, and he
Yeah.
had to extend the play.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think of all the Lions' issues, he is very, very near the bottom of it. I think
Yeah.
the defensive coordinator really needs to look himself in the mirror and understand his personnel better. And in terms of how to apply these young, talented guys in a way where they don't have to be put in positions they're not comfortable with.
Hmm.
And like I said about the man coverage with the safety, it's just little things that the defensive coordinator should know that I just don't think are being executed right now. Anything else on this game, Caleb, or are you satisfied with the rant that we went on?
Well, I mean, I agree with what you said, but like I think with when you have a lot of new young guys like the Lions do, even if you get a new DC in there, like these guys are still gonna have to learn. They're gonna still have to get that experience, and then just with all those injuries at receiver and then a few injuries at O line, it's like I again, I just like this team could be 0-4 and I wouldn't be surprised. Like, and that's
Mhm.
nothing on Rourke or anything. It's just amazing in football how quickly a season can go down and how quickly it can go up. But when Katoy and McGee, and I think one more player are like confirmed out for like 6 weeks,
Yeah.
that's that's almost half the season by that point. So yeah, it's not a good position for the team, definitely.
Margins are thin, man. And
Yeah.
to use an analogy for a different Lions team, I remember a certain 2025 year where they were 15-2 and looked like the best team in the NFL all season long, and they got bit by the injury bug at the worst time possible and
Yeah.
lost to the Washington Commanders in the playoffs. It just and I'd like to pretend like I'm over that, but I'm not. It sucks, and the margins are
Yeah.
so thin in football, and injuries happen so often, and the season is so short that when you're out for an extended period of time, it's not like you're just missing,
Yeah.
whatever it is, like a 16th of the season, like it is in hockey. You are missing significant portions of these games, and
Yeah.
it really, really sucks. But to turn it into a positive note, we're not all doom and gloom here in Vancouver. Goodness gracious me, what an amazing event it was on Thursday as Canada beats Qatar 6-0. It is the biggest win for any CONCACAF team in the history of the World Cup. It
Yeah.
is Canada's first ever World Cup win, and the way that they won it was so important considering Switzerland was able to beat Bosnia and Herzegovina 4-1. Goal differential means a lot in these group stage play. All that 6-0 win does is pretty much secure the fact that they are going to be in the knockout round of 32. Projected odds say they have a better than 99% chance
Yeah.
of doing it at this point. What an unbelievable day, night, everything it was for the city of Vancouver, Canada in general. Goodness gracious me, I have a lot to say about this, so I'm going to let you start before I talk about what the experience was like downtown. What were you thinking about watching that game? I know you're going to be in person in the Switzerland game. How fired up are you for the fact that you're going to get to experience that in person, man? Because it was a special, special event for pretty much anyone who got to experience it.
Yeah, I'm very excited, but that Qatar game was like arguably the most important game in Canadian men's soccer history. Just the fact that they finally got that win and they did it in the way that they did it, like you mentioned, to the goal differential. That's huge. A tie and you
Huge.
get first place in this group. Um, like I think a tie against Switzerland is possible. Switzerland to me has had, I think Switzerland's a very good country, but to me they've had a disappointing tournament so far. And Canada's in a great spot now. I do think it's going to be hard to not lose to Switzerland. I think they're a very good country. But like you said, either way, Canada's going through 99% chance. But you got to look at it like at the positives. This is a huge win for this country and this program, and I think Canada moving forward, like at the next World Cup, it'll be like, okay, this team's just getting better and better, and we're developing better and all that. But at this World Cup right now, they need to focus on Switzerland. It's going to be a hard match. I do think Switzerland will win. I just think they're going to be a little pissed about how poorly they performed against Qatar and how great Canada performed against Qatar. But Qatar is, I think, arguably the worst team in the tournament.
And I know
So
it's arguable.
yeah, I mean, like they just looked terrible. It wasn't even like a close game at all. And Qatar's goalie was awful. And he had a great game
And
against
faking
Switzerland, which
injuries
is
like 6 times.
yeah,
Sorry, I had to in there. He's pissing me off, man. Oh my gosh.
and
Every
like
time he jumped, oh my back, bro. You're a professional. Anyways, go ahead.
and like what was there at least one, if not two, own goals. Like there was a lot of weird bounces that they had. So,
When the
Canada,
ball's in your end the entire game,
yeah,
there's
exactly.
gonna be some weird bounces that go against you.
But yeah, great game from Canada, but they need to focus on Switzerland. It's a huge game, but it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, for sure. Um, if you don't mind, I just want to talk about the experience of downtown for a little bit
Yeah.
because I was not planning on going, but I saw a video about these people who paid $200,000 just to come down and experience the World Cup and just the environment of it. They weren't even going to a game, I
Yeah.
don't think. I think they
Yep.
got surprised with tickets after the video came out because someone saw them. They were like, these people deserve to go. So happy for them.
I
But
saw that video too.
people legitimately have this on their bucket list just to experience the environment surrounding this tournament.
Hmm.
And it's in my backyard. It's a sky train away. And I'm just going to sit at my house and watch it from afar when I'm never going to have another opportunity to do this again. I honestly I spoke those words to myself and I was like, you know what, we're gonna get this done. So I was able to hit up a buddy and we went down there. And as soon as we get to the Scott Road SkyTrain station, there is a group of 8 Canadian fans just partying and, drinking Coca-Colas, obviously, completely legal,
Yeah.
and singing and dancing to old like Canadian music and passing the football around. And this was before we even got on the SkyTrain. And once we do eventually get on the SkyTrain, we find another group of 12 people who are singing "O Canada" as they pull up to Scott Road Station. And every single time we stopped at a station and someone with Team Canada paraphernalia came onto the train, we chanted like we just won the World Cup. Like we just added another
Yeah.
member to our team. And this lovely, lovely Qatar couple who were rooting for them came onto the SkyTrain and we booed them for a little bit and we were going back and forth bantering and they were taking pictures of us and we were taking pictures with them. Like there was no actual nefarious intentions with any of it. It was all just within the confines of sports and how much it brings us all together, which I'm going to get into in a second. But we go to the SkyTrain Main Street station because we
Hmm.
wanted to go to the march on BC Place. And as soon as you get out of that SkyTrain station, Caleb, it was a sea of red and people with their hands up in the air chanting Canada and people on the side barricades cheering on all of the Canadians, like Brazilians in full face paint and
Yep.
Mexicans who have paint on their chest hairs and they have different Moroccans and instruments and stuff and they're playing tubas. Like it felt like a melting pot of all of the best elements of the world, to be totally honest with
Hmm.
you.
Yeah.
And I understand that I'm putting this in the most general terms, but it really reinforced why I love doing this podcast and why I love doing what I do because in terms of the general scope of the world, and I'm just going to use politics as an all-encompassing word for that. I understand that there's a whole lot more that goes into social and interpersonal connections than politics, but stay with me here. Politics are inherently the ultimate divider. There
Yeah.
is no way for everybody to agree on these intricate policies that affect billions of people across the world. And people will continue to fight over those realizations for generations. Sports feels completely separate from all of that stuff. You can escape all of the confines of your background, your political beliefs, your religious beliefs, whatever makes you you. And for 3 hours or 6 hours or however long you spend in that sporting environment, you are just simply a Canadian fan and a fan of these games and a fan of how they're able to bring people together. I was in the streets of Granville playing Sioux ball with people who I will never ever see again. I'm confident in that. But for those 30 minutes, we were just passing the ball around. And by the way, I was by far the worst out there. I was there with this Brazilian dude who was unbelievable and this older Argentinian lady who had some of the greatest touch with a football I've ever seen in my life. And they were cheering me on and giving me pointers. And I don't know, it's just such an unbelievable feeling to be a part of it. Sports all encompassing, but football in this particular case, just something that people can put everything, all of the bullshit of their lives to the side and just come together for this one thing and cheer on this one thing. And it was genuinely heartwarming. And it gave me a lot of optimism for the world in general. Because if people can, for a certain long period of time, come together and understand that what we're witnessing is once in a lifetime and special, and the melting pot of cultures that we have is probably never going to be seen in this city again. If that can happen, then I really feel like, in terms of how we treat each other in a general sense, we can be a really, really special community just as people. Because for those 6, 7 hours that I was downtown, it felt like everybody was on the same team. And it doesn't feel like that. Vancouver is one of the most divided cities probably in the world. We have a lot of different cultures who fight with each other, and there's definite issues in terms of integrating all of these people on a day-to-day basis. But when sports is the overbearing nature of how people come together, it's seamless, and it was gorgeous to see. I'm sorry that I ranted a little bit, but it was really, really cool, and something that I think everybody, if you live anywhere near the Lower Mainland, you should go there and experience it, because it shows how powerful sports can be as the ultimate uniter compared to the ultimate divider that really the rest of the world landscape is.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I've been to Granville a few times. Um, when you go down there, and I was wearing an Italian jersey one day, I was wearing a Canada jersey the other day. I had a buddy who was wearing a Croatian jersey, like, and then you meet these people who are also wearing the same thing as you. It's like
Hmm.
you've found a new best friend and you're talking to that guy for the next 10, 20 minutes, and it's just the greatest thing ever. And you're seeing like all these different nations and countries in one place. And, I got to give FIFA credit. I think a huge thing about this is the 48 team tournament. I think it's
Hmm.
been nothing but a success. What you do is you bring in these more smaller countries like Cape Verde. And, now you get these people celebrating their country, which they probably might have not done if they didn't make the World Cup. So, Granville has just been packed with fans all over the world. Like you said, Vancouver,
Hmm.
number one host city. And so you're going to get everyone from all these countries. And yeah, on Thursday, the Mexico Korea Republic game, I mean, there was a ton of Mexicans there who were just
Yeah.
partying and having the greatest time. And obviously, when Canada won the way they did, obviously, that's just going to be a huge deal as well. The entire time I'm there, though, I'm thinking, why? Like, I know the World Cup's gonna end, in less than a month, but why can't they just have Granville, like, with no cars? Like, it is,
Right.
like, a total, like, Dude, like when I'm there, I'm like it reminds me of Europe. It reminds me of like Mexico in a way, where just everyone is just having the greatest time, don't have to worry about a thing. Like if they could do no cars on Granville, I honestly think that would be better for everyone except for drivers.
Yeah, I mean, Uber people would have a problem with you, no doubt about it, but
Yeah.
I think everybody else would want this kind of vibe to continue forever, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah.
Like, people were trying to, like, an auction started for the hat I was wearing. I wear a Team Canada cowboy hat, and this Argentinian lady and this Mexican woman and this guy from, where was he from? Portugal. Like they were all doing different bids on the hats. Like I'll put up this and I'll put up this
No.
shirt that I bought, and it was hilarious, man. I'm telling you. And we ran into these guys from Egypt who were super nice. They were rooting for Qatar, and we were joking around with them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we've heard it all before." And just again, like you said, they become your best friends for like 10 minutes, and after that, you're never gonna see them again, and that's okay because they're going to have, whether you know it or not, just an imprint and a memory that's just as important as any sort of party or, night out that you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
That's why you do what you do, so that you can have those experiences in the back of your head. And I'm so happy that I was able to excuse me, go down there and experience it. I'm getting choked up about just how incredible this event has been for the city. And I hope that the powers that be, to go back your point, can understand that if there is a environment that people feel comfortable in and that is vibrant and fun, people are going to show up for it and they're going to make it better. And it feels like the city of Vancouver for too long has been the no fun city, and it's been shut down. And like you said, the traffic sucks and the cops are always a little bit too frivolent for any kind of nonsense that's going on that Granville Street on a day-to-day basis. Like the cops are incredibly lenient and there was a lot of them,
Yeah.
and
A ton
all
of
the ones
them.
I interact a ton of them, man,
From
and all the ones I
Calgary. There was
interacted
some
with were
from
great.
Calgary.
Yeah, they're imported cops, they really
Yeah.
were, like, it felt like there was a cop every square meter, felt incredibly safe, and I didn't feel like any of them were too antsy or trying to take away stuff, although, like, it was just a perfect experience that I hope I was able to articulate a little bit. Again, I apologize, I got a little bit ranty, but it really did feel like a sign of positive things that can come in so many aspects of life and the city, and just very happy I got to experience it. It's not going to be something that I forget for a very long time. Um we do have to move on to the Canucks though, who, man, like that also got me thinking, if the Canucks can go on another cup run, man. Oh, just they made it to the second round 3 years ago,
Yeah.
and it felt like the city was on fire. Like, if they can, anyways. Um, Caleb Malhotra is still a huge favorite to go third overall. Betting $10 on him to go third overall will win you $13, whereas betting $10 on Stenberg, who has the second best odds to go third overall, will win you $44. So clearly, the odds makers are quite sure that Malhotra is the pick. It almost feels inevitable at this point. The odds of San Jose taking Stenberg have gone up, but Chase Reed is not far behind. So the odds makers are saying even if Stenberg is on the board at 3, they think that Malhotra is the pick. Um, Caleb, I know you had some thoughts on this with the draft being less than a week away. What do you think about Caleb Malhotra currently being the runaway favorite for the Canucks to take him and for him to be coached by his dad?
Well, Elijah, when Jonathan Toews retired, what, a day ago or a few days ago, the
Yeah.
first thing I thought about was all his success, specifically his playoff success in the NHL, winning 3 Stanley Cups, at least one, if not two Conn Smythes. And then I looked back at it and I was like, sports are a copycat thing. When you're a bad team like the Canucks, who were ran poorly last year, you need to be a copycat of who wins the Stanley Cup. And ever since 2010, the majority of teams have that Jonathan Toews style player. Maybe not someone who's as talented, but a big 6'2" plus center who's a captain, who's a leader, who's Canadian in most times, who can play a full 200-foot game, a two-way centerman, a guy who can always be in contention for the Selke Award, a guy who's offensively productive and more importantly, offensively productive when it matters most, and that's Caleb Malhotra. I think he fits all those things I just mentioned, and he proved it in the OHL playoffs as well. And I think with Tays and with all these other guys who have won Stanley Cups, Jordan Stahl, Barkov, Eichel, O'Reilly, Crosby, Kopitar, Bergeron. Obviously, some of those guys are better than others, and there's some differences with all those guys. But overall, a big centerman who's going to be in contention for a Selke Award every time he's in his prime. I think Caleb Malhotra fits that, and that's why I think the Canucks should go with Malhotra at 3. Those types of players win Stanley Cups.
Yep. There's no doubt about it, and you did a really, really good job laying out the history of it. A couple of things that popped into my mind while you were talking about it, though. One, obviously, none of them had the baggage that this move will have with his dad, but we've talked about that enough, put that to the side. Second of all, when it comes to these bigger centers that you mentioned, they coming into the draft were known as full-on two-way type Selke guys. I don't know if Caleb Malhotra currently has the archetype to play defense quite on that level. Third, those teams led by those big-time centermen, they didn't succeed until they had a scoring winger beside them. Taves had Patrick Kane. Patrice Bergeron had David Pastrnak. I know Pastrnak didn't win a cup, but back in on the wings in 2011, Marchand and all of those guys. Crosby is Crosby. I have nothing to say about that. He's just one of the goats. Barkov obviously had Kachuk and bunch of scoring, Marchessault, all of those scoring wingers. So there does need to be an element of a game breaker either on the second line or with that two-way center to make it work. That guy can't do it on his own because he's only going to score around 60 points in the regular season. Not saying that's what Caleb's going to do, but in the archetype that we're talking about. Third of all, and I think this is the most important point, is next year's center class and next year's draft class in general is looking to be generational. There are at least 4 centers in next year's draft who already have better archetypes and prospective backgrounds than Caleb does. So if you're drafting for position at this point in your rebuild in 2026, I feel like that's short-sighted considering the talent that's coming down the pipeline next year, in which you might even have a better pick than you had this year. I don't think anyone is expecting the Canucks to be near playoff contenders. So you're going to have a top 10 pick minimum, I would think. So having that in your back pocket, knowing what's coming down the pipeline, it could be nice not having all 3 of your center positions filled, because at that point you'd have Caleb, Rossi, Pettersson. Maybe you want to keep that spot open for someone coming down the pipe in this generational 2027 draft class. But I do agree with your general point. This is a position that needs filling. I just don't know if this is the year to fill it, if that makes sense. Your response.
Yeah, well, no, I agree. And you also got Coots coming up.
Yeah.
But to me, it's kind of interesting what you just mentioned with the centers of next year because it's kind of a win-win for the Canucks. I think if they take Caleb, who's obviously not going to play in Vancouver next year, you might still be as bad of a team as you were last year, and you might be in contention for the first overall pick, which will obviously be the defenseman Landon Dupont. So if you took Caleb, then you're, trying to get the defenseman at 1. Whereas if you took Stenberg, who probably will play in Vancouver this year, the team probably will improve, who again, I love. I still think you go Stenberg at 3, but in general, I think a Caleb Malhotra type player is who wins you Stanley Cups. But if you go Stenberg at 3, he'll be in Vancouver. then you won't get as bad of a draft pick, and then you can take the centerman. So I think if you go center now, a guy who's not playing, the team will still be as bad. Whereas if you go winger now with Stenberg, the team should improve considering he'll be ready to play, I think, regular season week 1 in October. Then you'll have maybe a pick in that, I don't know, 7 to 10 range ideally, and then you can take one of these centers. So, it's going to be interesting, but obviously you can't bank on anything with the draft lottery as we've seen this past year.
Yeah, God knows. There's no way you can do that. I'm actually working on a project on the side, luckiest and unluckiest teams over the past half decade. And one of the things that I've been including in that is draft lottery position and the odds of that. And the Canucks are by far the unluckiest draft lottery team in the last 5, 10 years. It's not even close. So
Yeah.
interesting that you bring that up. But I do hear your point of long-term thinking. They might suck more next year without the NHL ready player in Stenberg. But at what point do you have too many cooks in the kitchen? Like, I understand that you're going to want to move off Pedersen eventually. That's fine. But like you mentioned with Coots coming up, and then you have Caleb, like, your spots down the middle are filled for the next, like, 15 years at that point. And to tell you the truth, I don't know if a top three centers of Coots, Malhotra, and Rossi is good enough to be a top end contender for the long term future. I just don't see enough offensive punch there, especially between Coots and Malhotra. I feel like they're similar archetypes, but I could be totally wrong. I think Malhotra does have offensive upside. I just don't see a 100-point guy or even 80 plus, to be totally honest with you. So I feel like enough guys around that 60 to 70 point range, it's like you need a first line established guy. And maybe Caleb turns into Jonathan Taves, and that is your first line centerman, and no issues there if he is. But again, I don't see the archetype defensively that I saw from Taves coming out of that draft. But I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that they are able to mend all of those puzzle pieces together because there is a lot up in the air for this team right now, and it is hard to put into words how important this draft is going to be for the long term future of this team. But at least the Canucks know exactly what they're doing in terms of they are fully in a rebuild. The Toronto Maple Leafs, on the other hand, I cannot put two and two together on this. I mean, I can. I just flatly disagree with it. They signed Darren Radish to an 8-year deal. It was kind of going to happen since John Chayka got hired. It has been widely reported that he is not obsessed with Darren Radish, but close to it.
Yeah.
Like, I understand this move kind of, but I'll let you start with this. When you first saw that Radish was going to the Leafs, Caleb, what was the first thought that hit your mind?
The first thought that hit my mind was that, the Leafs need defensemen, and there's not a huge opportunity to get them. You have
Mhm.
the first overall pick. You're gonna take Gavin McKenna. That's like not even a decision in my opinion. You don't have a first round pick next year. Your next pick in this year's draft is like in the 60s or something. So obviously that blue line was the worst part of Toronto's game last year, and I thought they had to make a move, and they get a guy who's offensively productive. And it's still weird when we've been watching the Canucks forever and they're not fully committed to the rebuild, and I get that sense from Toronto, but they needed help there, and it's an all right signing. But Toronto, I mean, with the hiring of Jim Hiller, there's been a lot of questionable things, but yeah, they needed defenseman help ASAP in my opinion. So it's kind of a 50 good, 50 bad for me.
No, for sure. And that was the first thing that came to my head too, is like they needed somebody, anybody to log 18 to 20 minutes a night on that blue line. They
Yeah.
flatly just didn't have enough horses. So, in that perspective, totally get it. In the broader scope, though, what is the goal for this franchise? Does anybody think that the Leafs are going to be serious contenders in the toughest division that I can remember in decades in the next like 3 to 5 years? I just don't see it. So is the goal to not be bad, or is the goal to be good? Because this is something to me that we saw with the Canucks and Quinn Hughes. You're trying to appease the American superstar you drafted to get him to stay by putting supplemental pieces around him that are good players without a long-term vision of how these good players can contribute to an actual Stanley Cup winning team. It feels like a desperation move to show Austin Matthews, no, we're still trying to win now, Austin. Please don't leave us.
Yeah.
And we saw that when the Canucks tried to do this exact same thing with Quinn Hughes, re-signing Besser, Demko, trading for Marcus Pettersson when they totally didn't have to, it left the Canucks with contracts that are still anchors on this team to this day and prevented them from trading veterans when they obviously should have. And it feels as though the Leafs are learning from their own mistakes instead of learning from others' mistakes and trying to keep their former first overall pick in town by signing these on the margins pieces to win 42 games instead of 40 games. Instead of understanding that where we are in this position as one of the worst teams in our division, it might be time to trade these assets when they are at their highest value, blow it up, and start with this franchise player who you were just gifted on a silver platter in one of the luckiest draft lottery wins that we've ever seen. It feels
Yeah.
like they were given the golden ticket and they're just throwing it away. I don't know how impactful Gavin McKenna is going to be in his first 3 years. If he turns into Mitch Marner, God bless him. Leafs, this is an amazing move. I just don't see that as realistic, though.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like them getting the first overall pick and them getting Gavin McKenna kind of maybe was enough already to keep Matthews for one more year. So I really
Mm,
don't think they needed to like full on go out of their way and keep doing these things that Matthews wants because he's not McDavid. Like he's not
mhm.
like, oh, the Oilers need to do whatever McDavid or even Draisaitl say because, they have no chance without those guys. Toronto's in a spot where they can survive without Matthews and they can actually get a proper rebuild going. So they don't have to
Agreed.
listen to whatever, Matthews wants. So I also think it's interesting from that perspective. But yeah, I mean, Toronto's goal, I I think they're going to be a playoff team next year, but what, a first round exit who gets swept? It's very Pittsburgh Steelers-ish to me, where it's like
Totally.
this is we just want to make the playoffs because we made the playoffs, yippee, and that's it, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's not what wins championships in any sport. You got to go full on, and this satisfying players thing, it just doesn't work, and I'm glad the Canucks got out of that one quickly.
Totally. It feels like they are trying to not lose instead of trying to win.
Hmm.
And I think whenever you're in that position of, for lack of a better word, making decisions out of fear, it never results in anything good because there's no long-term vision. It's like whack-a-mole. You're just putting tape over bullet holes. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not a long-term fix. Yes, Darren Radish is going to be a good defenseman for you. Is Darren Radish the missing piece to a Stanley Cup contender in Toronto? Just absolutely not. And again, with the strength of their division, they are absolutely a large underdog to make the playoffs next year.
Oh yeah.
It's just like you said, it's Steelers-esque, and it is the most annoying position for me as a sports analyst and as a fan of these teams, like the Canucks in particular, were in this for years. It's like you're not bad enough to get a really good draft pick, but you're not good enough to be legitimate contenders. You're just in the murky middle of just bleh and being, and you have no actual long-term vision of how to become a great team. You're just satisfied with being passable. It's one of my least favorite traits in people in general, to be honest with you, who just put in the most bare limit amount of work to pass by that day instead of just attacking it and, being another level of workhorse. Again, I'm not putting this in the most succinct of words, but it really, really frustrates me because I've been on this rant a million times and I'm trying to find different ways to say it. But at the end of the day, the goal of sports is to win a championship.
Yeah.
That is the North Star. That is what you should be working towards, not a first round exit in the Atlantic Division. It just really irritates me, and I really don't like the Leafs. And it still pisses me off because I just hate that process. It really makes me upset. Um, any last thoughts on the Leafs or the Vancouver sports scene or any of this stuff before we wrap up for today?
No, I fully agree with what you said there. Like you see it in, I just think of the Pittsburgh Steelers right away. It's like nine
Me
and
too.
eight is their goal. And, the Leafs can't get caught up in that. Like, I feel like the Leafs are a team that genuinely wants to win the Stanley Cup in the past. They just haven't had that playoff success. Whereas more, this is like, oh, Toronto, it's by far the biggest market in terms of hockey. Like, this is a team that wants to get out of that suck mode as soon as possible because they know the fans and the media will be right there to mention everything 24/7. So maybe that's the pressure they feel of wanting to make the playoffs as quickly as possible. I mean, they made the playoffs the year that they drafted Matthews, so that could be the way that they're looking at it. But you need to focus on only winning the Stanley Cup and not pleasing fans, or well, you want to please the fans, but focus on the winning and not pleasing the media, let's say.
For sure. And to use another example, like the Chicago Bulls, it feels
Oh
like the
yeah.
entire reason they operate
Yep.
is so they can sell a home play-in game
Yep.
to their fans and rake in a bunch of money. Like that feels like what the Leafs are doing right now. They just want to sell tickets and keep Matthews because he's going to move jerseys, and Radish is going to be good enough to where they can say, "Oh, we got this new piece. We might make the playoffs this year and buy this Gavin McKenna jersey." You know what I mean? It just
Yeah.
doesn't feel like the motivation is let's win a Stanley Cup. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. As always, want to know, did you guys get to experience the FIFA sensation downtown? How did you enjoy it? What was your experience like? We want to hear all about it in the comments down below. What was your reaction to the BC Lions game? Anything you want. We are small enough as though we can read all comments. Love doing so, so drop something down there. Please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed what you heard. Please subscribe if you really enjoyed it. Spit Sports Show, just at over 445 subscribers. Big things happening on this channel as always. And I will see you all in the next one. Peace out. I love you guys.